Welcome to Cassidy's Crocheting Channel exclusive video for Kelly Carney. Today we're going to start off crocheting a granny square for Mom's sweater. So first you're gonna, get your string. Today we're starting off with a nice, beautiful yellow color. First we're going to crochet a magic circle. So you're going to take your yarn and you're going to put it in the palm of your hand. Now I like to make sure that I do my magic circle with 3 fingers instead of 4, and that way when we go around the palm, we're going to wrap it around the back. Again, the tail is here, wrap it around the back. You're going to come back around and you're going to cross it, and then you're going to pinch the yarn with your pinky finger. Now you should have an X. You're going to take your crochet hook, go underneath the first yarn, hook onto the second yarn, pull it. You're going to turn your hook around like so, and then you're going to grab the second yarn and you're going to pull it through the loop. Let me do that again without slowing it down for you. All right, we're going to chain 3. Now I'm using a 3.5 millimeter hook today. Here's our magic circle. Make sure that your magic circle has its tail end. And you're going to take the yarn it over. You're going to insert it so that the tail and the loop are both on the hook. Yarn over, pull it through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and that's a double crochet stitch. We need a total of 16 stitches on this loop. We're gonna double crochet after our chain 15 times. So again, you're gonna need a total of 16 stitches. Your chain 3 counts as your 16th stitch. Alright, count how many I have. So, including the chain, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Now, usually I count the top V's, but because the way that the chain is designed, it's a little bit flared out right now on the base. So I'm counting these double strings to see how many chains I have, or stitches. So I want to say I had 13, so I need 3 more. So we're going to tighten that up. Okay. And now we're going to slip stitch. This is the chain. We're going to slip stitch into the top of the chain right here. So this is your first stitch. Your post, which is this piece right here, the stitch on top of the post is your first double crochet stitch. This is your chain, so you're going to go 1 stitch behind the first stitch of your post, which is this one. And that is 1 row done. I'm going to cut it. And I'm going to take the slip stitch and I'm just going to pull the yarn all the way through. And then continue to pull that to tighten it up. Okay. First row done. Alright, now for the color change. You've all been overthinking it. It's not a big deal. So, here is your slip stitch. Here is the top of the chain that we crocheted into. So, slip stitch. Here's the top of the chain that we crocheted into. You're going to insert your hook into the top of the chain that we slip stitched into. You're going to take your new color, yarn over it on your hook. You're going to pull it through like so. Now I like to secure it instead of just leaving it hanging, so you take your tail end, the loose piece, you're going to yarn over and you're going to pull it through the stitch like so, and that way it's a little bit more secure and not flying everywhere. Then you're going to reinsert your hook into the chain you just made. I always count this as my first chain, so instead of chaining 3, we're going to chain 2 since we've already done our first chain. I think maybe at the end of it you want to be able to count 3 V's. So here's your first V, second V, third V. So we've chained 3. Now for this next row we are going to increase all the way around. We're going to double crochet twice into each stitch. So just like our bucket hats, and this counts as our first stitch. So we're going to reinsert the hook back into the top of the chain, right where we just put our new color in. And this is going to be our first increase. So here's 2 stitches. Going to yarn over, go into the very next stitch. Yarn over into the same stitch because we're increasing. So we're going to have 2 stitches for each stitch. Just undo this as well. Here we are. We're approaching our last stitch. So you're going to want to make sure that you pull your slip stitch out of the way. So your slip stitch is this very tiny stitch here. We're not crocheting into that tiny stitch. We're crocheting into this one. So we're going to double crochet our normal increase. Okay, so normal increase. Now for our slip stitch, again, here's our chain, 1, 2, 3. Instead of doing this one, we want to make sure we're crocheting into the top of the chain. So here's your post, here's your posts stitch. We're not doing that one. We're doing your chain 1, 2, 3 into the top of the chain. And this is a slip stitch. There we go. Now we should have 32 of this color. And let me pull this through, tighten it up, give that a little count, make sure we're counting the chain. 31, 32. Now you can also count the V's at the top, which I think is what most people do. I've started to find it a little bit easier, especially with lighter colored yarn or tighter yarn, to just count the posts, because you can kind of feel them a little bit easier. Alright, so again, inner circle, 16 stitches, second circle, 32 stitches. We increased from 16 to 32 because we double crocheted into every stitch. So we've doubled the number of stitches from 16 to 32. Now for this next one, I don't know the total number of stitches, but we should have 16 groups. So we're going to find our chain. Here's our chain. I like to go on the right of our chain. Actually, where am I? Nope, different row. We're still going to be in the top stitch of our chain. So same stitch where we crocheted our slip stitch into, top of the chain. Here's our first post, so not the first post stitch, but the stitch next to that one. Okay, take our color. We're going to pull our new color through, take our tail, yarn over, and pull it all the way through. Reinsert the hook, and yarn over. We're going to chain 2, 3. Okay, so here's our 3 chains. And now we're still going to be doing 2 double crochet stitches into 1 stitch, but we're going to be skipping some and chaining some. So this is our first stitch. We're going to double crochet into the same stitch that we just did our chain into. Okay, so here's our double crochet stitch. Now what's different about this one is instead of increasing again in the next stitch, we are going to chain 1. That's very important that you chain 1. And then instead of crocheting into the very next stitch, we're going to skip this stitch and crochet into the next one. So not this one, we're going to crochet into the next one. Okay, so here's our increase. And that creates that clustering. So here's your chain 1 to create the gap. We skip 1 to create the gap. We're going to chain 1. So not this stitch, but the next stitch. chain 1. Now we're not going to go into the next stitch because we are done. So again, we're going to find the top of our chain. Here's our post. There's the top stitch for our post. So we're not doing this one. We are doing 1, 2, 3, top chain. Right. And slip stitch. We're going to cut, pull it through, and tighten. Now we should have 16 of these groups. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. All right, on to the next color. Squaring it up. So here is our chain. We are going to insert our hook instead of into the top stitches like we're used to. We're just going to insert it straight through this gap. And we're going to grab our color. And we're going to take our tail end. We're going to pull it all the way through, insert our hook. Okay, and we're going to chain 3 like normal. 1, 2, 3. Here's our chain. Take this up a little bit. All right, so for this round, we are going to be doing, instead of groups of 2, we're going to be crocheting 3. So we've already done our first stitch. So insert again into the gap, not the stitch. You're going to yarn over. Okay. Through. So here's our first cluster of 3. Now for this first one, we are going to chain 2, not just 1, but 2. So make sure you've got 2 chains. Going to yarn over again, and in the same gap, we're going to make another cluster of 3. All right, so here's our first cluster, here's our second cluster, and here is the chain 2. As you can see, it's starting to square up a little bit. This is going to be the corner of our square. And now we are not going to chain anything. So we want to make sure that you have the 2 loops. And we're going to yarn over, and you're going to insert it into the gap between posts. So not the stitch, not the top of the chain, into the gap. And we're going to do a cluster of 3 double crochet stitches. Okay. And we want to make sure that for each side we're going to have 5 clusters of 3. Now between the clusters where we do the 2 chains, there should be 3 of these clusters of 3. So this is going to be the second cluster of 3. All right, here is our next corner. So each side has 5 clusters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's the first cluster of our next side. that was our last cluster of 3. So now we're going to slip stitch into the top of the chain. So again, here's our post. This is our post stitch. So this stitch right next to it is what we are slip stitching into. Okay, and we slip stitch. Cut the yarn, pull it through, tighten it up, and I will pause here because Gregor just got back with food. But we've got one more row. We're moving on to our last color, which is pink. Okay. Got my pink yarn. So here's my chain. Alright, so we've been following our chains pretty closely so far. For this next one, we are, instead of going in this gap, we're going to go into the corner. So here is our corner gap. Going to grab our new color, pull it through the gap, take the tail end, wrap it around, and pull it all the way through. Okay, insert your hook back in, and we're going to chain 3. There's our 3. Okay, and we are going to do basically the same thing that we did in the last round, except instead of having 3 clusters in between our corners, we're going to have 4. So this is going to be our first corner. So here is our first cluster of 3. We're going to chain 2, and we're going to begin our second cluster of the corner. And we're going to go to the next one. Again, we're doing the gap, not the stitch, but the gap. Yeah. Now, if you want to get really particular about your clusters, what I'm checking as I go through the gap, and I yarn over, and I do my double crochet stitches. So I yarn over again, go through the gap. As I'm flipping this around, I'm making sure that the yarn, the active yarn that I'm working on, is laying nicely with the other stitch that I just did. And you'll just get a little bit more of a uniform look. As you can see, like, it's all very nice and straight. And this kind of goes back to tension, because otherwise you don't want to have things look bumpy and gappy. So just making sure that yarn, as you're yarning over, is laying nicely. So again, here is the yarn. As we flip it back around, we want to make sure that yarn is just laying nicely next to the next stitch. Alright, there's our corner. So pull this out for a little minute. Here's our first side. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 clusters per side. You're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 clusters between your corner stitches. Okay, and then we're going to slip stitch into the top of the chain, like so. Pull it through, cut, pull the yarn all the way through, and tighten. And there we go, one granny square. Happy birthday, Kelly.